Yes?
Good morning, Reichsmarschall.
Who is this?
It's Dr. Mengele. You expressed an interest in questioning Fatima Hassan.
Yes?
This morning I am bringing her out of her coma.
Well, thank you for letting me know.
It's the sun.
Do you know where you are?
Nazis.
Stand aside, Reichsmarschall, please. Begin another bonus.
Welcome to the Binge List. I'm your host, Paul Chappell, and today I am reviewing The Man in the High Castle Season 3. Now, before I get into this, let me just say I've actually finished watching this season like 2 weeks ago, and I just, with a lot of things I review, if I don't immediately have an angle on that particular show or movie or game or whatever, I don't feel like I can do a show about it. So I kind of sat on this show for a little while because there's so many good things about this show and so many things that don't really work well. The first problem with this show is that, like a lot of shows today, there was a 2-year period between season 2 and season 3. Some of that had to do with the fact that Amazon, who produces the show, they lost the showrunner and had to find someone else. And also they ran out of material to base the show on because the show is based on a book by Philip K. Dick. And Philip K. Dick had wrote a few chapters for the sequel to this book, and he never finished it. He died before, I think he died in 83 or something, and he never finished writing the sequel. So a lot of this season was taken from some chapters that he had actually written, and they were suspiciously similar to something that I saw earlier this year, I think it was, with, if you watch Arrow or Flash or Supergirl, they had a crossover event, and somebody was getting married.
Does anyone have just cause why these two should not be married? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Peace is overrated.
Oh, you've got to be kidding me.
Nazis?
I hate Nazis.
I'm trying to remember. Anyway, I think it was Diggle or somebody. I don't know. I stopped watching Flash around after the 3rd season. I think I stopped watching Arrow 4th season. For one thing, their seasons are way too long. They have 22 episodes, and you're going to get about half of those episodes are going to be absolute garbage because they're just too many episodes. But, okay, R2. But for the most part, I mean, they were good, but the slog through 22 episodes just turned me off after a while. And another thing with those shows, they end up killing everybody even closely connected with the hero which is just annoying at a certain point. Anyway, getting back to crossover event. There was a crossover event, and during the crossover, during this wedding or whatever, Nazis invade from a parallel universe, from the multiverse. They even used that term in Man in High Castle. And so Nazis attack during this crossover event. They go to this neighboring parallel Earth, and they fight Nazis. And all the heroes, Arrow, Green Arrow, and Supergirl, and I don't know about Flash, but they go to the parallel universe, and Oliver Queen is actually like president, or he's like the Führer, and Supergirl's a Nazi. So anyway, I felt like, I don't know, either they stole the plot from this crossover event, or those chapters from Philip K. Dick were extremely similar to this crossover event. I don't know. Don't care. Point is, they had this thing called the multiverse, which they revealed in the third season. So if you know anything about this show, let me just back up a little bit. If you're new to it, it's Amazon's tentpole show, I would say, like Game of Thrones on HBO. This is their show. It's a science fiction show. It's alternative history. It basically explores what happened if the Axis powers won the war. Basically, Japan and Germany have never really explained what happened to the Italian fascists, but the Japanese and the Germans have divided up the United States. West Coast, of course, the Pacific states of America are controlled by the Japanese. The Greater Reich of America is the East Coast, and in between is a neutral zone where there are still black people. I guess they killed all the black people, but there's a few black people, white people, and Jews in the neutral zone trying to survive, and nobody really controls the neutral zone. So it's kind of like the Wild West. It's kind of cool, actually, the whole neutral zone thing. You know, there's kind of a Cold War going on between Japan and Germany. And the whole point of the show is that it's an alternate history, because if you know anything about Franklin Delano Roosevelt, there was an attempted assassination on his life. I mean, that's really happened. So this show predisposes that he was actually killed during this assassination attempt. And as a result, America never entered the war, World War II. And as a result of that, the Germans were able to conquer Britain, and they were able to develop a nuclear weapon, which they actually were working on, if you know anything about the history. But so this happens, and they nuke Washington, D.C., and invade the United States, and Japan invades the Western United States, and they take over. So by 1947, the war is over, and the Axis powers have won. This show actually happens in I think it starts in 1960. So by the third season is 1962, and I'll just go through the things I liked about this season first. I like the fact that they explore what America be like under fascist rule, because, as you know, we have a right-wing fascist resurgence here in America right as we speak. So this show took on new relevance in just the past year or so. You know, we got Nazis holding rallies like in Virginia and other places. So this is not far-fetched. Some of the things you watch in the show are not far-fetched at all. And I think it's good to remind people what a fascist regime would actually look like. I mean, the most obvious thing they focus on in the show is showing you the Nazis and their eugenics policies. And I thought that was very interesting because, you know, there's a lot of scientists like Stephen Hawking, for instance. Stephen Hawking would be dead under a Nazi regime. Even the head of Apple, and I'm blanking on his name for all of a sudden. Tim Cook, I'm sorry. Tim Cook, dead. Did you see The Perfect Mind? And I forget the scientist's name in The Perfect Mind. He had schizophrenia. He would have been killed in a Nazi regime because the Nazis believed in purity, and anybody with any kind of disability or mental illness would have been gassed and cremated. So the show is interesting from that point. It's also interesting in the fact that this season they introduced J. Edgar Hoover. He's been played by William Forsythe, and it's interesting because, first of all, I didn't know he was J. Edgar Hoover right out. For some reason, I really didn't get that until like the third episode. Oh, this guy's J. Edgar Hoover. Primarily because he's been played by William Forsythe, who is an actor who you see in a lot of gangster films. So the fact that he was being played by William Forsythe just threw me off. But then I realized, oh my God, this guy is J. Edgar Hoover, and he's in charge of the Nazi equivalent of what the FBI would have been, which is the American Right Bureau of Investigation, the ARBI. So and that aspect of the show was kind of interesting to me because, as you probably know about J. Edgar Hoover, he did not care about civil liberties. He famously encouraged Martin Luther King to commit suicide. I mean, he really had a problem with the civil rights movement. And it was also rumored, ironically, that he was gay. And there's a point during this season where he's trying to bring down one of the main characters.
So I've been trying to think my way around this, Edgar. How you could possibly think it was a wise plan of action to send your goons into my house. Threaten my wife.
I was merely stating the facts as they stand.
But he's trying to bring down John Smith, and John Smith gets some dirt on J. Edgar Hoover and gets him on his side because he has his dirt. And they never show you what the dirt that he dug up on J. Edgar Hoover, but I just assumed it had something to do with his alleged. Now I say alleged because I don't think it's being proven. I don't think it's been proven conclusively that he was gay, but it's suspicious that one of his friends that he constantly went on vacation with, and there's actually pictures of him with this man on the internet, his friend that and I don't know the guy's name. Hopefully I can look it up and maybe put it up for you. But this man he was just a really good friend of J. Edgar Hoover, and J. Edgar Hoover never married, so there's that. Anyway, I like that aspect of the show. Also, they had a character name with the last name Rockwell, and I was kind of shocked at first. I was like, they made Norman Rockwell a Nazi, and he's like the president of the American Right. But then I found out is actually George Lincoln Rockwell. And George Lincoln Rockwell was the founder of the American Nazi Party. So in this alternate reality, he is the top Nazi in the United States. So it's stuff like that I really found fascinating, that that even in this alternate universe, somebody like J. Edgar Hoover would still be on top, and that his values were not necessarily inconsistent with those Nazi beliefs. And somebody like George Lincoln Rockwell would naturally rise to the top. There's also a school in the shows named after a prominent Nazi during the 20s, and I'm drawing a blank on his name, but there's just a lot of interesting things like that in the show, which I like. And the fact that they amped up the science fiction aspect of the show was a nice thing. Because the first two seasons didn't really feel like necessarily you were watching science fiction. Alternate history, yes. Science fiction, not necessarily. So I like that aspect. The problems I have with the show is the ensemble cast. The characters, the main character is a woman called Juliana Crane, played by Alexa Davalos. Sounds Greek to me. Her character is not that terribly interesting. And there's also these two characters, Ed McCarthy and Robert Childen. They're kind of like antique dealers. One of them's gay, and the other one's just greedy. And they're traveling through the Midwest trying to find trinkets to sell back to the Japanese, because the Japanese value old American artifacts. The actual Nazis and the Japanese fascists are actually more interesting than the actual good guys in the show, which I kind of found a little bit disturbing. You get to see, especially with John Smith, he's at the end of the second season, his son turned himself in to the public health department of the American Right because he discovers that he has this neurological condition and that is going to get worse. So he's been raised in the Nazi system, and he succumbs to, like I said, the public health, and turns himself in. And all this time during the second season, John Smith has been trying to cover up his son's illness. He actually kills his son's doctor, because his son's doctor is, by law, he's required to report anybody with any kind of disability or terminal illness or anything like that. So it's interesting to see how John Smith squares his acceptance of Nazi ideas with his American ideals. The Nazis actually obliterating American history. Famously, in one of the trailers for this season, they show the Liberty Bell being melted into a swastika. So on the flip side of that, they introduced a new character, kind of a Han Solo type character, Irish guy, former U.S. Army type, named Wyatt Price, played by Jason O'Mara. They introduced him, and he kind of serves as kind of a fool for Juliana, and a kind of an ally too. But he was a breath of fresh air this season, and I feel like he'll actually work out as far as making the ensemble cast a little bit more relatable. I think he actually is a step in the right direction. There's also an element that they introduced this season about what the homosexuals experience in the Reich. One of the main characters, main German characters, her name is Nicole Dormer. She's actually shown as the new head of, not the head of propaganda, but she's kind of like Leni Riefenstahl. She's like a filmmaker. And she's in charge of this whole plan for the Nazis to pretty much wipe the slate clean from American history. Well, you discover this season that she is gay, or at least bisexual. And it struck me watching this what happens to her that really the attitudes toward gay people in the Nazi reality and our reality were not much different in the 60s. It was criminal to be homosexual in Britain. I don't even think it was decriminalized till either the late 60s, early 70s. So I found that aspect of the show kind of interesting because here you got a particular person that isn't really, I mean, you got a situation where the parallels between the two universes pretty much sync up. I mean, as far as attitudes are concerned. So I thought that was interesting. And one other way they could make the show more interesting going forward, this show takes place almost exclusively in either New York, San Francisco, or parts, different cities in the neutral zone. And it really struck me watching the show that I really want to know what happens. Like, for instance, what happened in Hollywood? What happened in Los Angeles after the occupation? What happened in the South? Because they really don't tell you what happened to all the black people. I'm assuming they were just exterminated, but maybe they're slaves. Was slavery reintroduced? So there's some things that they really have, there's some low-hanging fruit they really haven't taken a bite out of yet. So it'd really be interesting if they expanded on the actual world building in the upcoming seasons. But those are just a few things I thought were interesting, and also that I had a problem with. And the show has so much potential to be better, and I really feel like they're just squandering a lot of things, particularly with the cast. They killed off a few characters this season, so maybe, just maybe, that will help going forward, but I don't know. I think with this whole introduction of the multiverse, you got a situation where I think they're going to bring back a lot of characters, but I'm not sure they're going to do that. But it seems like that's the direction they're headed. So that's about it. Like I said, if you're a science fiction fan, binge this. If you're not, there's plenty of other shows on Netflix. But that's all I got for today, and I will see you when I see you. Thanks for watching.